my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. I'd like to take a minute to talk about this episode's sponsor, Aeroflow Breast Pumps. Did you know that breast pumps and milk storage bags, maternity compression garments, even lactation education and support can all be covered by your insurance? Aeroflow helps millions of parents unlock these breastfeeding and postpartum essentials by working directly with your insurance company to get these free essentials shipped straight to your door. Aeroflow offers all major pump brands, including Medela, Spectra, Motif, Lancino, Amita, LV, Willow, and more. Visit aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birthhour to fill out their free and easy qualify through insurance form. Don't forget to use the promo code BIRTHHOUR15 in their online shop for 15% off all supplies and accessories. You've got enough on your plate. Why not let Aeroflow Breast Pumps help support you on your breastfeeding journey? At the end of this episode, I talk with Kate not only about getting her breast pump for free through Aeroflow, but also about taking advantage of their online lactation classes. So stay tuned for that conversation. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another way you can get involved with the Birth Hour community is by joining our Patreon. This is where you pledge your support of the Birth Hour at $5 a month or more, and you get perks in return, like access to all of our archived episodes. That's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. We've been putting out birth stories since 2015, and those are all available in our archives via Patreon. And you also get access to our private Facebook community, which is a really great group of people who are there to support you, become friends, and just encourage you on this journey through parenthood. So find out more about that at patreon.com/birthhour. Today's birth story guest is Catherine, and she has 2 birth stories to share with us: a hospital birth that had a short NICU stay, and then she talks about her experience with secondary infertility, followed by a really healing home birth. All right, let's hear from Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Before we get to your stories, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, I'm Catherine. I'm a cello teacher, and I'm married to my partner, Jack. We've been together about 12 years, and we have 2 daughters, Alana, who's 4, and Poppy, who's 2 months old. We live in Minneapolis.
All right. Well, let's start with your first pregnancy, whatever you want to share there.
Yeah, so Jack is trans. So when we decided to get pregnant, we needed to figure out how we were going to do that since we don't have any sperm in our house.
Mm-hmm.
So we did some research and decided to go with IUI and using donor sperm from a sperm bank. So just doing that through my women's health clinic with an OB, and started our first IUI in the summer of 2020, kind of right in the middle of the pandemic. And yeah, I don't know why we just decided that was a good time to do that. But yeah, after about 7 months and on the 5th IUI is when we got pregnant with our first daughter. The beginning of the pregnancy was totally fine. I did have quite a bit of anxiety about having miscarriages. I think mostly because all of the research that I had done online, a lot of the information about cycle tracking and how to do an IUI and all of that on the internet at the time was geared towards cis het people with infertility, not queer people. And so even though I didn't have any indications that I'd have any fertility problems, that was kind of the information that I was absorbing. And so it made me feel like miscarriage was almost like the most likely thing to happen, which isn't necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that made me have a little more anxiety in the first trimester as I was getting through those early weeks. But had my anatomy scan at 20 weeks and everything was looking good, except for the insertion point of the umbilical cord. They were having a little hard time seeing it. And so they asked me to come back in like 2 weeks later to do more like high level scan to get more detailed information. And those 2 weeks between 20 and 22 weeks were like the best weeks of my pregnancy because I just felt like, all right, this is like a viable pregnancy. Everything's looking good. Like I was physically feeling great at that point and just was very happy with everything. And then at that 22-week appointment, they diagnosed me with a velamentous cord insertion, which is basically just like the last few inches of the umbilical cord where it attaches to the placenta. It doesn't have that protective casing on it. So it's just kind of exposed blood vessels. And that in itself isn't necessarily like it's a little bit of a high risk, but it's not a huge deal. But the other thing was that those exposed blood vessels were lying directly over my cervix, which is called vasa previa. And that is like an extremely dangerous condition because basically if you were to go into labor, then the baby would bleed out and die within a couple of minutes because the pressure of that, like your water breaking or the contractions could basically burst.
Oh my gosh, I have not heard of that before. It's really scary.
Yeah, it's very, very scary. But the MFM who I was seeing told me like, even though this sounds absolutely terrifying, like when we have like a treatment plan and when we follow it, the results are really, really good. Like 98, 99% of babies are totally healthy. Basically what they do is they want to prevent you from going into labor. So at 32 weeks, you get admitted to the hospital for continuous monitoring. And if everything's looking good, you have a C-section at 36 weeks. And then if you ever show any signs of labor while you're in the hospital, then they just do a C-section right away. So yeah, it was very a big change in my idea of like what my pregnancy was going to look like, trying to figure out like basically going on maternity leave a couple months early and like all of that stuff. But I did feel pretty good about like the plan, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then at a couple weeks later, a month later, I had my follow-up scan just to check on things and see how it all was doing. Oh, and at that initial appointment too, the MFM had said it is possible for this to resolve, but it's very, very rare. And in the meantime, as I was kind of like probably doing the thing I shouldn't have done, which was going online and like doing more research on vasa previa because I hadn't heard of it at all either. And I found a couple of like Facebook groups and stuff. And people there were basically saying like, okay, if your doctor ever tries to tell you that this has resolved, like it hasn't, it's not possible for it to resolve. And like, if your doctor tries to tell you that, try to like argue back against it and like your baby won't be safe kind of a thing, which also kind of freaked me out. And then sure enough, at my follow-up appointment, the scan showed that the blood vessels had moved away enough from my cervix that they said that it had resolved and I was cleared for like a full-term vaginal delivery, basically. And that was kind of when my anxiety really kicked off because I had read all this stuff online and I now just like didn't believe that my baby actually was safe for me to go into labor. So yeah, then the rest of my pregnancy basically was just really, really hard. I did end up finding a therapist to help me with all of that. And I did talk to my doctor about it too. And she explained everything to me like really thoroughly and also like said that I could have one more additional scan with MFM, even though I like technically didn't need it. And the MFM people, when I went for that extra scan, they were like, well, basically, why are you here? We told you you didn't need to come back here again. They were very like dismissive of me being there. But eventually I did get convinced enough that like I agreed to not get a C-section and to like go with, what my original plan had been to just have a vaginal birth in the hospital. But there was still a part of me, like all the way to the end of my pregnancy, that did not fully believe that I would be bringing home a living baby, which just made things difficult. But that was pretty much the pregnancy. I did some things to prepare for the birth. I found an organization in Minneapolis called the Queer Birth Project, and they do birth classes, and they also have like lists of like queer doulas and midwives and stuff in the area. because we were in COVID, we only could have 2 support people at the hospital, and I really wanted my mom to be there. So I decided not to have a doula, even though I had read stuff about like how good a doula can be. But I figured like, I don't know, if I had to make the choice between my mom or a doula, my mom was going to be the one that I wanted to be there at my birth. But I took this birth class, the Career Birth Project, which was also online because of COVID. But I still like got to meet a couple other people who were pregnant at the same time and got lots of like good information. So that was good. I did like some working out, did lots of long walks with my dog, but otherwise I pretty much just like for that birth, I was trying to do the thing where I stayed as open to all the possibilities of what could happen. And so I didn't really have a birth plan. I was just like, I'm going to just see how it goes and see what direction things come in. So yeah, I think that was just about everything from that pregnancy.
Okay. All right. So how did the birth go?
Yeah. So it was 39 weeks. I finished work. I was done with work on 39 weeks on a Friday. And I thought maybe I'd have a little bit of time that I would get to like have a week of just like hanging out, or even more than that, because I heard so much about how first time moms go late. But I went into labor 2 nights later on Sunday night. It was about like 9:30 or 10. I was getting into bed and started feeling some contractions and called labor and delivery. And they said, all right, sounds good. Just try to rest and come in when things get more intense. And then, I don't know, a couple hours later, probably, I went to the bathroom and my water started leaking. And I could tell that the color was not clear. It was like a kind of greenish yellow. So I was like, okay, there's meconium in there. And this was also the time when I started panicking just a little bit, because I also was, I think with the water breaking, there was also some bloody show, but the blood just like freaked me out. But we called the hospital again and they said to just come right in. So we did. And as soon as I was in labor and delivery and like hooked up to the monitors, I just like relaxed. I was like, okay, I'm in a safe place. Like they're going to take care of my baby. They're going to take care of me. Like it's all going to be fine. And because of the meconium and the leaking water, they suggested that I start Servidil because I was not at all dilated or effaced at that point. So they gave me the Servidil and then also gave me something for like some kind of sleeping medication to help me get a couple of hours of rest, which the contractions were still so mild at this point that I was able to sleep for a couple hours. And then basically just woke up the next morning in the hospital and just started laboring. Things kind of very gradually ramped up in intensity through the day. And by like 3 p.m., I was in the shower, in and out of the shower, like having more difficulty coping with the contractions, but still like feeling okay. And then they checked me at that point around 3 p.m. and I still was only 1 centimeter dilated. So they said that they really wanted to start Pitocin to try to get things moving along faster. Everything was looking fine with my baby at that point, but I guess they were concerned just about the length of time since I did have that meconium in my water. And so I agreed to the Pitocin. And as soon as the Pitocin started, it was like 0 to 100. Like the contractions got so much more intense. And then also I had no break in between them anymore. They were just back to back to back. And so I pretty quickly after that asked for the epidural. And then once I got the epidural placed, like everything like felt pretty good. It took a little longer to start working on one side than the other, but it did start working on both sides after a bit. And then everything just went super, super fast. So like only a couple hours after the epidural was placed, they checked me again and I was 10 centimeters ready to push. And I just pushed for like 30 minutes. And then right at the end, my baby's heart rate started dropping and not catching up again. So the doctor at that point was in there and they had a whole pediatric team in there. And the doctor was like, okay, if you don't get your baby out on the next push, then we're going to need to use like the forceps or the vacuum. I can't remember which one they were going to use. And I guess that was all the motivation I needed, because on that next push, I just gave everything I had and she came right out and they put her on my chest and she was gray and limp. And within probably 1 or 2 seconds, there were just like people swooping in and grabbing away from me to go try to get her breathing. And it turned out that she had inhaled meconium on her way out. And So yeah, I was pretty out of it, but even with them taking her away from me right away, the first feeling that I had was just relief, both that like I had done it and that I'd gotten her out and that she was here, but also that I was not the only one responsible for like knowing if she was okay, basically. Like I found that to be a really stressful part of pregnancy. It was like keeping track of the kicks and all of that, and just like having other people also taking care of her or like being there made me feel very relieved. But also then very quickly that turned into more fear because she was getting oxygen but still wasn't able to breathe. And so they ended up taking her down to the special care nursery and putting her on a breathing tube on a ventilator. And a little while later, they gave a call up to the room and told us that they were going to have to transfer her to the children's hospital because they didn't have a NICU at the hospital I was at. So they didn't take care of babies on ventilators, basically, which would have meant like I would have had to stay at that hospital and my husband would have had to go with her. So that was not great. But about 5 or 10 minutes later, they called back again and said, actually, the neonatologist they were talking to had suggested taking her off the ventilator and seeing how she did. And she started just breathing room air, not even on oxygen. She just like made a big, quick comeback. So they did not have to transfer her, which was great. Oh, and the other little thing from that immediate postpartum was that one of the things that can be a risk with the velamentous cord insertion is that there's, I guess, a slightly bigger risk for postpartum hemorrhage. So they were trying to encourage me to get the placenta out pretty quick. And I think they must have tugged on the cord or something because the cord detached completely while the placenta was still inside me. So then they had to manually remove the placenta. And as the epidural was wearing off at that part, it was just the most painful of any of it.
Yeah.
It worked. They got it out. It was all in one piece.
That's good, but not the way you want to end the birth for sure.
No.
I can relate to that one, and I wish I couldn't. Okay, so then how was your postpartum?
She ended up with a 5-day hospital stay because after the breathing thing after she was, breathing well and everything, while they had her for observation overnight, her bilirubin spiked really, really high, and she ended up having pretty bad jaundice. And so she was under those phototherapy lights for like 5 days. Yeah. So that was not ideal also, but I was able to stay at the hospital with her the whole time, which was nice. They had like a little pull-out couch thing in her room that I could stay on. And since it wasn't a super long stay, I could stay with her. But yeah, once we got home, it was pretty good. I would say the one thing about that postpartum is that I really had a hard time like connecting with her at first. I think probably just because of how anxious I'd been during her pregnancy, it really felt like I wasn't depressed, but I just felt like I was taking care of somebody else's baby for the first like 3 or 4 months. And I think once finally she started getting a little bit more like interactive, I think is when that kind of I started feeling more like I could really connect to her and like, oh yeah, this is my baby, not just like some random baby that I'm taking care of around the clock. So yeah, once she was around like 15 months, that's when we kind of decided to start trying for our second. And I had felt like it took a long time to conceive the first time. It was like 7 months. And so I was like, okay, so this one might take a while too. But, and the one different thing for this second time is that I had heard about a midwife in Minneapolis who does at-home inseminations for queer people, which was awesome. And so we actually didn't have to go into a clinic to do the IUIs. She just came to our house and did it right at home. And that, like, I don't know, made everything feel much nicer. But yeah, so we got started, and on the 6th IUI in January of 2024, I got pregnant and ended up having a miscarriage at like 6.5 weeks. And yeah, that was just really devastating, especially because again, I had felt like 6 months actually it was like 8 or 9 months because we didn't do every single month IUI. But yeah, it felt like it had already taken so long. And the thing about it was that I think it was almost like I somehow knew what I needed to do after that happened, like I just stayed in bed for like a week, and my parents came up and helped out with my older daughter. And I just like gave myself the time to grieve that pregnancy and just like physically heal and emotionally heal a little bit. And it ended up like I was so sad, but I didn't fall into depression, which is what I was kind of worried was going to happen, because that I have struggled with depression for a lot of my adult life. But it was almost like because there was actually something concrete that I was sad about, that it was more just something that it was being directed at. So I kind of, I don't know, it was really, really hard, but I pretty quickly was like, okay, I'm ready to get back to trying again as soon as my period came back again, which took a couple months. And so we got back to it. And then I had 2 chemical pregnancies, one in July and then one in October. And by the time of that second chemical pregnancy, kind of decided like, okay, I want to keep trying, but also I need to like make some changes, both in terms of like what I'm doing to try to get pregnant, to see if there's anything that I can do to like increase my chances. And then also just to kind of get my mental health in a more stable place. So I ended up finding the book Real Food for Fertility by Lily Nichols. And that was super helpful, because I just kind of realized that like I hadn't really been thinking about fertility in terms of like what I was eating at all. And so I ended up making a bunch of changes to how I was eating based on what I read in that book, which was like basically eating a lot more vegetables and more protein. And it's almost kind of like eating more of the kind of foods that is recommended to eat during pregnancy can also help boost fertility as well. So then I also started doing acupuncture for fertility, because I figured, I don't know if this is going to do anything, but at the very least, it's relaxing and nice. And if it does help, then great. And if it doesn't, then I'm just like getting a nice hour to myself, lying down and relaxing.
I like it.
And yeah, just trying to like keep up with exercising, and started meditating. At that point, also the midwife who had been doing the inseminations recommended that we see a fertility specialist, just to see if there was any like medical reason that I kept having these chemical pregnancies. And so we made an appointment at a fertility clinic in town, and had to wait a couple months to get in. So in December, got some tests done, and everything came back like totally normal. So basically I ended up getting diagnosed with the incredibly unhelpful diagnosis of unexplained infertility. And I remember the doctor just being like, we don't know why you haven't gotten pregnant yet, but if you keep doing it, you'll get pregnant eventually. And I was like, okay.
So helpful.
Thank you. When the only way that you can get pregnant is by spending a lot of money, like having infertility gets really, really, really expensive. And the only reason that we were able to keep going with trying that, with like keeping trying to get pregnant, is because my parents very generously offered to help us financially. But yeah, we definitely wouldn't have been able to try more than a couple times otherwise. So anyway, the fertility clinic recommended that we switch to doing medicated IUIs. So they put me on letrozole, which I guess just helps like with follicle growth and everything. And then they were monitoring the cycles and triggering ovulation. So, which is supposed to help like pinpoint exactly when you're ovulating to get the timing exactly right. And I was like wondering if that was actually necessary, because I was like, I am getting pregnant, so we know the timing is good. They said that the trigger shot can, I guess, also help increase your chances of conceiving, even if it's not just the timing. So we did that. And on the second IUI at the clinic, I got pregnant again. And by this point, like I knew I was pregnant from like 8 days after my IUI, even though like you're not supposed to be able to take a pregnancy test until your missed period or something. But I'd been pregnant in these early days so many times at this point that like I knew the signs. Like my boobs started hurting in a way that they don't hurt when I'm about to get my period. And so it was like 8 days after, and I was like, okay, I'm pregnant again. Like, just like didn't even want to deal with it, because I just was convinced that it was just going to be another miscarriage. And I did not take a pregnancy test because I don't know, I already knew I was pregnant. But then at 14 days, the clinic, they take your blood and do like a blood pregnancy test, and then do a follow-up 2 days later to see if the numbers are doubling. And they weren't doubling. And so we could tell that it was going to be another not viable pregnancy. And sure enough, like a week later, I started bleeding again. So that one was just like, I don't know. I think I'd really gotten my hopes up about like the fertility medications helping a lot and like all the things I was doing with dietary changes and everything. So the fourth one just really, really hit hard. And after that, we took off a month of trying because not only was I feeling kind of like I needed a break, but also my husband was going to have a major surgery. And if I did get pregnant, we can't do that right now anyway, because he was going to need like 6 weeks to recover from his surgery. But after his surgery and after that, we did one more cycle with the fertility clinic. And that is when I actually ended up finally having the pregnancy that led to my daughter, Poppy. So it was almost 2 years after we started trying that I got pregnant.
Yeah. Okay. So then how did this pregnancy go?
It was hard. I was still anxious even after I got past, I all of my miscarriages were early, but even I got past those first couple of weeks, it was just like, I was just so convinced that something was going to go wrong again. And I did have some bleeding also at like 9 or 10 weeks, which ended up being nothing. We got it checked out and everything was fine. And then around 13 weeks, I felt a gush of fluid and thought, oh man, is that my like water leaking? Like, what could that possibly be? And I called my midwife in a panic and she came over and checked and it was not amniotic fluid. And so she thought like, oh, maybe you have like an infection or something. And so ran a bunch of tests to test for different infections and nothing came back positive. And the fluid just kept on being there. And we never figured out what it was, but it was not an infection. It wasn't my amniotic fluid leaking. It seems like I just had an insanely large amount of cervical mucus. And so that was just like a constant then for the rest of my pregnancy. Had to always have a pad in. And
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty annoying.
It made me nervous at first because I thought like, oh, what if this is an infection that we haven't caught or something? Mm-hmm. And then after it'd been a month or two, I was like, okay, if this was something bad, we would have known by now.
Yeah. And
so I like kind of chilled out about it, but It was very annoying.
Yeah, man, I hear something new every episode, I swear.
Yeah, and my midwife said she had never seen that before either.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad everything was okay.
Yeah, it's like a totally healthy, normal pregnancy. Like those are one of the only little things. Everything else, just we had the anatomy scan and everything looked great. And yeah, it all went fine. But yeah, that was the other thing is that I had decided that I wanted to have a home birth this second time. And I decided that at some point during all of the infertility stuff, I don't remember exactly when. And at first, when I made that decision, I kind of felt myself like I was a little bit crazy because I had a baby who needed like immediate medical intervention when she was born. But I don't know, I just like, after having this midwife come to my house to do the IUIs, it was taking so long. And she also like helped me through my miscarriages and everything. And so we had developed this relationship with her. And I was like, I just kind of was like, I want her to be the one who does my pregnancy and is there for my birth. And she just happened to be a home birth midwife. And so, yeah, Jack and I talked it over and we decided that was what we wanted to do. And yeah, it ended up being really the best decision ever because it was just night and day, the prenatal care and postpartum care and like everything in between was just like so much nicer and better than what we'd had with my first daughter.
Yeah. Okay. So nothing else from the pregnancy came up that was something your midwife had never heard before or anything like that?
No, that was it. Yeah. And she was saying that, she was like, this is so strange, but like, I'm not convinced that you're not just having a completely healthy, normal pregnancy either. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of what it turned out to be. So.
All right. Well, how did labor start this time?
All right. Well, wait, I just remember there was one other thing from the pregnancy side, which was not related to me, but my husband had some complications from the surgery that he had that meant that made it like so that he was kind of in a low level of pain all the time. And he was having difficulty like walking more than like 5 or 10 minutes at a time, which meant that like the two of us combined, like me being pregnant and him having these like surgery complications, like we were kind of a hot mess as a household. But so he actually ended up having a follow-up surgery in November to try to address those issues. And that was when I was 8 months pregnant. So that was a challenge. And just like, because then he was, recovering from that surgery and I was needing to help him while I was like so exhausted and like in pain, just like at the end of my pregnancy. But luckily he was pretty fully recovered by the time I gave birth. So that was just kind of like added an extra wrench in at the end of pregnancy there. But yeah, so labor started kind of the same actually as it started with my first. Except with one exception, which is that this time I had prodromal labor for like 3 weeks, which I did not have at all the first time. I like had no signs that labor was going to start at all. And this time it was like when I was, just shy of 38 weeks, I started having contractions, and it started just like every day I'd have contractions off and on through the day, and they would fade away by evening. The nice thing about it was it wasn't interrupting my sleep because they weren't happening at night. But it was really, I don't know. I guess as anybody who's had long time prodromal labor knows, it just like really messes with your mind. And also my parents were planning on being there for the birth. Like my mom was going to help out with the birth and my dad was going to be with my daughter. And they had been up in Minnesota visiting for Thanksgiving, which was around when I was 38 weeks. And so when I started having these contractions, they just decided to stay, which was great. But it did mean I felt a little bit like a washed pot, like just like having my parents there. And it also made me think that I was going to go into labor a lot sooner than I was. And long story short, it ended up being 41 weeks when I finally actually went into labor. And it was right just in the evening, right as my husband was getting my daughter ready for bed. I was just lying on the couch downstairs and felt a little pop and ran up the stairs to go into the bathroom. And they were actually in the bathroom because my daughter was brushing her teeth, getting ready for bed. And I hadn't planned on telling her that I was, that my water was breaking, but I kind of had to. And she was so excited. Just like, so my baby sister's going to be born today? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And we were a little worried she wouldn't fall asleep after that, but luckily she did fall asleep very quickly. And the contractions that had been going on kind of gradually ramped up after that. Called my midwife and my mom, and also called my sister. My sister was the other person I was planning on having at the birth. She lives in Madison, which is about a 4-hour drive away. And she's a high school teacher. And we had been talking about like, basically I would call her when I went into labor. And if it seemed like it would make sense for her to be able to come, she would do it. And if she just didn't think she was going to be able to come, then we wouldn't, it would be fine. So I called her and she was like, I don't know. I'd have to make sub plans. Like tomorrow's Monday. I don't know if I can do it. I was like, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Like you just, you'll come visit the baby some other time. It'll be fine. And then we hung up and she called me back like 5 minutes later. It was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I'm getting in the car and I'm coming. So that was really nice to hear. And so she just like dashed over sub plans and got in the car and made the drive.
Good. I'm glad y'all had that all planned out.
This labor just felt so like, I don't know. It felt like there were just no surprises. It just like steadily progressed, like very slowly, gradually contractions got a little closer together, a little more intense. By the time my sister got there at like 1:30 in the morning, things were like really ramping up. We had the birth pool set up in my music studio, which was actually the perfect spot because it's just this cozy little room. And we strung up all these twinkle lights and just, it was like almost felt like just a nice cozy little cave. And so probably around like 2 in the morning, I got into the birth pool and was laboring there. And the water like definitely felt a little better. I don't know if it felt like as much pain relief as I was hoping it would, but it felt better enough that I was like, okay, I'm not getting out of here again. So, and my midwife is there. And then, I don't know, as things started getting more intense, she eventually called in the second midwife who was who was going to be there for the birth. And I started feeling like I needed to push. And this was another like thing that was very different from the hospital, is that I didn't have any cervical checks at all. So I didn't know how far along I was, but I figured like, okay, if I feel like I need to push, maybe I'll try pushing. And then after a little bit of that, my midwife said, it's sounding like there might be something in the way. Do you mind if I check you? And I said, okay, that sounds good. And she checked me, and I was fully dilated, but I had just a little bit of a cervical lip still in the way. And so she said, so you have two options. You could either try laboring through a few more contractions without pushing and just try to like see if it'll just, you'll get the rest of the dilation. Or I can, on the next contraction, I can just kind of hold it aside as you're pushing. And that's going to hurt more. But then, you'll probably push past it. And I was like, I definitely want a second option, because at that point, the idea of like trying to do more contractions without pushing was, I did not think that was going to happen, or I didn't want that to happen. I think like at that point in my labor, like I don't think I ever got to the point of feeling like I can't do this. But as I was like in transition and starting to push, I definitely felt like I kept on saying over and over again, like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to. Like, as soon as I felt a contraction coming, that's just what I was saying. And like everybody, all like my sister and Jack and everybody were all just like, you can do it. You're doing great. Like, you can totally do it. And I started just like really shouting through the contractions, which honestly felt better, like to be, making a lot of noise. But once my midwife like found that cervical lip and she held it aside on the next contraction, then on that next push, she just like came out into the birth canal and she was out on the push after that. And I did not do a good job of like waiting when I felt the ring of fire. I just pushed right through it because I just wanted to be done, which was probably a mistake because I did have a second-degree tear that probably could have been avoided. But I don't know. It felt like the right thing at the time. So yeah, and she came out and they pulled her up onto my chest in the water, and she was perfectly healthy. And I just kept on saying, like, is that my baby? Like, is she okay? And everybody was like, yeah, that's your baby. And I don't know. I just couldn't believe it. I think I just was like, part of me was like, so many things have gone wrong. So many things have been so hard for so long that just like, I didn't think it was possible that I could actually just have this home birth that I had wanted and have it go well. And it was just, this really amazing feeling to just get to hold my baby and not have to have her taken off me, and just to get up and go over to the couch and be in my own house surrounded by all the people. And my daughter, my sister woke my daughter up like right after Poppy was born. And so she came downstairs and was just like so cute meeting her little sister, like just like 3 minutes after she was born. It was just, it was really special.
Yeah, so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then how was postpartum?
It was really, really good. I think it really was so, just having that birth experience really was so healing from all of the things that happened with Alana's pregnancy and birth, and just all of the like years of infertility, just like have that baby in my arms. And was just, it was really, really totally the opposite experience. Yeah. I like, rather than feeling like I was taking care of somebody else's baby, I was like, this is my baby and I don't want anybody else to hold her. I just want to like hold her all the time. And I did let other people hold her, but it was just, it was really great. Oh. We did have like a little hiccup, which is that it seems that I just make jaundiced babies. It can apparently be genetic. Because it can be genetic, my midwife did check her bilirubin levels on day 2 and they were high. And so we did have to go into the hospital for 2 days. And honestly, that hospital stay was actually almost harder than the one with my first daughter, because it was I don't know, it was just such a contrast to how she had been born and how the first 2 days of her life had been. And I just was kind of an emotional wreck. Also a physically having to go to the hospital and walk around in the hospital when I was just 2 days postpartum was not fun. But we only had to be there 2 days and then we came home again.
That's good. All right. Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing those stories with us.
Yeah.
Do you want to share any resources?
Yeah. So I think like the biggest resources that I mean, honestly, like for my second pregnancy, I just listened to so many birth stories. Like I was just listening to the birth hour all the time. And I think hearing so many different stories is just like the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
I also read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, which I know is always recommended, and it was the single most useful thing I read at all. I think that just gave me a lot of good perspective and like coping tools for having that unmedicated home birth. The Queer Birth Project, if you're in the Twin Cities area and if you're queer, is a great resource. They have birth classes, they have new parent groups, they have, doulas and all kinds of stuff. I also did prenatal yoga at a yoga studio called Bluma here in Minneapolis that does like prenatal and postpartum. I'm planning on going and doing. They also have like postpartum, like baby and mama like workouts that I'm planning on starting up soon here. So that was another good one if you're local to the Twin Cities.
Great. Yeah, send me all the links and we'll put them on the show notes. And then what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
I'm not much on social media, but if people want to contact me, they can email me. And that I gave you that email address for the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it on the show notes. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Catherine.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Now I'm going to talk to Kate about Aeroflow breast pumps and some of the great things that they offer. Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for coming on the Birth Hour today to chat with me about Aeroflow breast pumps.
Yay. Hi, Bryn. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you reached out via Instagram about Aeroflow and your experience with them, and I was so excited to talk with you. So will you just tell people a little bit about, how you found Aeroflow and the process you went through for using their services?
Yeah, for sure. So it was actually through the Birth Hour, through your podcast that I heard about Aeroflow and decided to just fill out the form. It's like a very simple form you fill out online where you put in your insurance information and then like Aeroflow does the rest.
Yeah.
And so they got me a free breast pump. I think it was the Spectra is the one that was the one I chose through insurance, but Aeroflow will actually show you like all of the different pumps available to you, how much they cost through insurance. Some of them, like you do have to pay a little bit. And then they show you the ones that are fully covered. And so I decided, I chose the Spectra and they sent it to me. And then I think I got like an email or a text that said like, hey, thanks for, using Aeroflow. You should also sign up for our lactation classes. And, you get tons of those sort of promotional emails.
Right.
And I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll take a look at this later. And then I started looking more into it and I was like, oh, actually these classes look pretty cool. They were fully virtual and they were covered by insurance. And so I decided, I was like, what the heck, let's do it. And I signed up for, I think, 4 different classes. I only made it to 2 of them, but the 2 that I went to were Lactation 101 and Pumping 101. And they're just like such great classes. I was like so surprised by the quality of the classes. They're taught by, is it
IBCLC?
Yeah. And they just gave a ton of good information about like starting breastfeeding off right. And so it also would be helpful too for people who are newly breastfeeding, like to kind of work through some potential breastfeeding issues like latching or positioning. But yeah, I contribute a lot to my success. So my daughter is 4 weeks old now. And we had a pretty solid start to breastfeeding. I've been exclusively breastfeeding and I contribute a lot of it to having that support from the class. The way the classes run too they're live.
Oh, cool. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, they're virtual. So you can join via Zoom.
Yeah.
But they're live. And so the instructor is there teaching the course. They're also really just like super good teachers. Like I felt like they were the way they presented information was really good. They had tons of like visuals and videos, like live demonstrations where they had like a baby doll and they were showing different like positions and ways to get baby to latch. And so they are live though, so you can ask questions. And so you're able to like ask questions in the chat. You can, unmute and like have a conversation back and forth. So very like helpful for like if you have specific questions too about lactation.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Especially like you said, like even after baby arrives to be able to like look at the positioning of the baby doll and like position your own baby on screen and be like, like this, or that's great.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And like the pumping 101, like this is my first baby and I had never pumped before. And so I have the same pump that they were using in the demo, the Spectra.
Oh, nice.
And so it was really cool I kind of like walked along with, like did the demo along with them on the same pump, which was just really helpful having never used a breast pump before. Like,
yeah.
They look kind of scary, at least to me, they looked pretty scary. And so it was nice to like be able to sort of walk through with the instructor and get a demo.
So when you were signing up for it, was the scheduling, were there like several a month or like lots of options? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. It was pretty convenient. They gave a few times a month, I want to say, and like I want to say they were like different hours too.
Okay.
But it was like scheduling was really, really easy. I remember like, cause they have, all your information, like they have insurance information already. And so they do all the back end work of clearing this with insurance. Cause they're, classes run by professionals and they do cost money, but insurance covers the cost. And so, they would like take attendance at the beginning of the Zoom call. And then they did like all that back end work to make sure it was covered by insurance. And so I didn't have to do anything except like put in my name and email to sign up. So yeah, like really easy.
Awesome.
And again, like kind of going into it, I was like, I'll give this a try, kind of see what it's like. And then I was just like captivated. I remember after the call, getting off particularly the Lactation 101 call, and just like being like to my partner, like, oh my gosh, you've got to hear like what I learned.
Oh, cool.
Like he was like, wow, you see, like, you're like an expert now in lactation. I was like, I feel like it. Like, I feel like I'm like, have a lot of good, solid information. So yeah, like super pleasantly surprised by how informative and just helpful the classes were.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that I had posted about Aeroflow on Instagram and you responded like, their classes are amazing. And so I knew you were passionate about it enough to like respond to an Instagram story.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And I knew they had lactation education, but I wasn't fully aware of the format and everything and the fact that they're live. I mean, that's like having your own virtual lactation consultant. So that's amazing. And
I had taken like a childbirth ed class, paid for, like it was a community one that I paid for here. And I live in Minneapolis. And it was like, one of the weeks we went over lactation and it was like similar information, but like free, like I was like, and it also like it was kind of went more in depth because the Aeroflow class was specifically a lactation class, like the Lactation 101 class, what I'm thinking of. So yeah, it was just like very quality, like good information.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to add this definitely to our resources on the website and our childbirth course because we go over a lot of that stuff as well. But the live aspect, I think, is just so great, even if it's a refresher for, second or third time, or you already took a class, just something to kind of get a refresher and ask questions and things like that. So.
And there are some other classes, like the other ones I signed up for but didn't end up making. There was like one on like maternity leave, like and your kind of like I think lactation stuff around leave and like going back to work.
Right.
But yeah, they were all covered through insurance. So.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to have to reach out to Aeroflow and audit these classes so that I can talk about it more as well. But thank you so much for shining a spotlight on it.
Yeah, for sure. Highly recommend. So when you get that email or that text that says, hey, do you want to also sign up for the classes? You should do it. Because like I said, I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, like promotional email for Airflow, but.
Right. And we're all paying so much for insurance, like we might as well get as much out of it as we can.
Totally. It was well worth it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Kate.
Yeah, of course, Fran. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much again to Catherine for sharing her birth stories with us, and to Aeroflow Breast Pumps for sponsoring this episode. To get more information from today's episode, head over to thebirthhour.com and search for Catherine's name in the search bar to find her show notes page.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.